I'm back. Has Bernard mentioned why he couldn't do it this time around?
Yeah, he's, I think, having far worse internet connectivity problems than you. I think he's located somewhere away from home that has very spotty internet.
I see. Right.
So welcome back, everyone. I expect we'll have a larger number of participants than we currently have, so we'll wait a little bit longer, and hopefully several more people will join in the next few minutes before we get started.
Can I try sharing my screen, Aaron, in the meantime?
Yeah, you should be able to do that.
Just a moment.
You can see your screen.
Is that full screen now?
Now it's full screen.
The only problem is I can't see the hands up when it's full screen, so I may have to flip between full screen and not full screen for the discussion.
Yeah, I can also try to monitor the hands up, but
yeah,
whatever you find comfortable.
Sure.
I got a question from Ricardo if anyone is talking. I'm talking now, so if anyone can't hear me now, I am talking. Okay. It's figured out. Good. I realize as I say, anyone who can't hear me talking is not being helped. So I am talking now. So I am talking now for anyone who needs that. Okay. Confirmation that everyone can hear me. I'm probably annoying you all. It's 2 minutes past. And I think now the participants are closer to what we've had for previous discussions. So we're probably mostly back from break. Today, Lior has very kindly agreed to chair the discussion session. So Lior, please take it away whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Aaron. Is that also okay without the full screen? Do you see the?
Yeah, we can see the whole, especially when you scroll. Yeah, so we miss either the very top or the very bottom of the slide.
All right.
But otherwise, we see it all.
I'll start by sharing and I will see. Oh, sorry, I just stopped sharing actually. Share screen. And then, right. Okay, so you can still hear me, right?
Yes.
All right, so thanks everyone for coming along. That was not meant, yes, so here's the agenda. Right, so in the absence of Bernard, it seems that I've been promoted to a community elder for the sake of running this discussion session. Hopefully it's a one-off. And it's a pleasure. As I'll explain in a moment, it's also been quite hard to think how to summarize it properly, how to do justice to this great meeting. Anyway, this is the agenda. We're thinking about splitting it into two parts. So the first part is an overview, and the second part is a review of Lisa status. And I think we won't be needing more than 20 or 30 minutes for the second part, so we should be feeling free to take more time with the first part. All right, so the first part, I'll start with my summary of the meeting in one slide. And then I'll attempt to tell you what I think the main areas of, sort of main thrust, main challenges that people are working on are at this moment, and where I think the next big things are going to happen. And I'll invite you to sort of comment on my particular choice and invite you to add other items to the list. And that'll give you a little bit of impression, my own impression about this conference, some observations that I could make. And then I thought we should spend some time reflecting on how this format works for Capra. So it's a new age, and people, it's not only COVID, but also people are becoming a bit more conscious about their air travel and so on. So things may be a bit different for us in terms of scientific collaboration in moving forward. And I wanted to discuss in a particular context of Capra how this format works. So there I'll have a blank slide basically, and I'll invite you to comment on that. Right, and I'll add also that I'd like to talk about the next Capra at the end of this part. Okay. Does anyone think that we should have something else to talk about in this part? Any other item that I may have forgotten? Aaron, if you see any hand raised.
No hands raised at the moment.
Okay, about anything we can look it up later. Okay. Right. So right. So I thought how best to summarize this meeting, and I challenged myself by deciding to do it in one slide, sticking to one slide, and to a diagram. So not a list of items, and that's very hard because this was a great meeting, and it was also great in scope. We talked about so many different things. And so that's what I end up with. So I call this the Capra 23 COVID diagram. I thought, I thought it would be best to represent the structure of this endeavor with a concentric structure with some radiating bits. And yeah, when I looked at it at the end, it looked like something else. So there you go, the COVID diagram for the Capra meeting. And so let me go through it. So I think we have a solid core. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Can you? Aaron?
Yes, so you can see your cursor. Sorry,
yeah. So there's a solid core. It's the core Capra challenge. You know, Emery waveforms, and this is very much still here. And it's the core that seems to be driving everything else. So yeah, that's very much still here. So that's the big challenge of modeling Emery waveforms for Lisa. And I very much like Alvin's way of splitting this challenge into 3 degrees of freedom. So accuracy, efficiency, and extensiveness. And there's been some great progress on each of these fronts, and also in making sure that we can have things that push forward in more than one of these directions. And so in particular, if you look at extensive, yeah, we looked many times before at looking at going to eccentricity, so moving away from circular orbits to eccentricity. So we've seen a lot in that respect. But what needs to be emphasized and said that there's a lot of overdue attention to spin. We've seen a lot on that this Capra, especially today. I think all of the talks were on spin, and that's of course important and had to happen. It's very good that it is happening now finally. And we've also seen people paying attention to environmental effects as we know, all these things can be important in the end when it comes to Lisa templates. All right. Now, the thing about Capra, the one aspect that I like in particular is that this constant iteration between calculation and foundation. So that's the core of the core activity, the foundation here. And so, for example, when Adam is doing, Adam does second order calculation and realizes that he needs to formulate a second order balance relation, he goes back to foundation and does foundational work and then comes back to calculation. When there was Stephen and Peter realized that they need to solve the Tokorsky equation source or do second order Tokorsky calculation, they realize that they don't have a reconstruction procedure with sources, so they go back to foundations and develop something new. And once these things are developed, these contributions to foundational theory, so new bits of perturbation theory, new elements of understanding of motion relativity. These things have their own separate life. They can be applied later on in a great many things, and they sort of be stored. They are stored safely in the library of wisdom, and so they have their own life besides the Capra content, which is nice. So that's one aspect I like, that we haven't gone away from foundations. We keep iterating with it. So historically, we started with foundations simply because we had to. We didn't have any foundations. We couldn't do any calculation. But even now that we've pushed so far with calculation, we're still finding ourselves in a state where we have to go routinely to foundation and do new things there. And that's something that appeals to me a lot in this whole endeavor. And so we still get these great foundational talks, and for me it's just coming to Capra to listen to Abe having another spectacular idea, or to Alex arguing with Eric. That's for me, that's worth the money already. Coming to Capra. So that we haven't lost yet, despite the 23 years of Capra, and that's great. All right, so that's the core activity. And the core activity is still there. We haven't yet obtained those accurate Emery waveforms. But as we've seen in the last decade or so, the Capra community keeps finding new ways of reinventing itself or making itself useful to greater communities. So every year we see another arm popping out of this core and connecting to another community who find what we do interesting and useful. I'll get to that aspect later in my other slides as well. And so this year there's been a lot by way of connecting to here on the right to amplitudes and EFT, PN and PM. And there's also a new connection, a newly established connection to NR here on the left. And many other connections that we've already had that will reinforce significantly with great talks that we listen to. So yeah, so then there's this other layer, this outward-facing layer where we do application and synergy. So the entire thing is driven from the way I see it from the memory waveform activities, but then there's splinter activities. People find new applications and connect to other community, and that's great. And that's the reason why in this conference we have 200 people and not 30. Yeah, as we used to have in Capras just a decade ago, because we are useful and other people find what we do interesting. That's great. And so as part of it, we have guest appearances, people who normally work in different fields. So we're very happy to, to have Ricardo and Rafael and Davide and many other people here. And from our experience, lots of guests come and stay, and we see them again and again. We hope that this will be the case here as well. Right, so yes, what else do I have to say about this diagram? I'm not sure. I want to stop here and see if anyone wants to say anything about this structure. Of course, there are many different ways to organize this. Oh yes, one thing I wanted to say, I think I put all the names here of all the speakers, but don't be particularly upset if you think your name is not in the right place. So for many of those names can easily fit in more than one place, and that's perhaps part of the story, that we have highly connected community. So people work in areas that connect to different fields, and that's part of the niceness of the entire endeavor. Okay, I'll stop here for a sec just to see if anyone wants to say anything. Let me come out of full screen. Can anyone actually hear me still?
We've heard everything.
Okay.
I think that was, I think this is an excellent diagram, unfortunately very timely in shape, and I think a great summary of things. So does anyone have any comments? One question, I think it's hard to read the future, but one question I might have is, historically, what synergies have come back in to help the self-force community? And are there any particular areas of connection that we need to put a little more work in? It seems like post-Minkowski and amplitude methods are very exciting right now with new communities coming in. But as an outsider, it's not clear to me where and when the applications will arrive for us.
Yeah, so Thibaut Damour has this grand plan of putting everything together, and he showed us how it's done in detail in his recent papers, and basically using bits and pieces of each of its approaches, EFT and PM and PN and NR, and using UOB as a ring to rule them all. And the idea is to, as we discussed in some of the talks, the idea is that some bits of the, let's say, full Hamiltonian that are very hard to get using one method are much easier to get using another method, and vice versa. So like, putting resources together, you can more easily make progress. And
so I guess to rephrase my question, there's been this really fascinating discussion about how, so for example, second order self-force can then generate very naturally high order PN information in a particular way through the post-Minkowski expansion. And so self-force clearly keeps feeding into kind of the effective one body framework, maybe kind of controlling binaries, especially at lower mass ratios. Have people explicitly thought about how these things then come back into self-force, for example, beyond maybe having PN predictions to test against second order self-force calculations? What about how those things will actually perhaps advance self-force?
Right, so you're asking about the feedback from this. So one example we've seen is feedback from an R.
Yes.
We call Martin's walk. How using it now you can get some idea about the higher order post-diabatic expansion, and then make interesting comparisons. So that's really one of the front lines that I marked in my next slide as something that we most definitely will see important development coming through. And that's an example of how we get a feedback back from other fields. Yeah, how exactly we get a feedback to self-force from PM is less clear to me. If by self-force we are restricting ourselves to the Emery problem, then that's less obvious. Does anyone else want to say anything about that? No. Shall we move on then?
Sounds like it.
All right. Okay, so here's so I hope you can see the full list. There are 4 items at the moment in it. Right, from tiers. So this is my recap of the main sort of front lines where people are pushing, trying to push now. So second order calculations, I think this has been here on the list for a while and most likely will remain on the list for a little more while. So we've seen, again, great progress, mostly thanks to the work of Adam and the great cluster of students that he gathered around him, and the work in Dublin. But we also, we also see some very interesting work from Chris on a self-force second order calculations. That's another thing where I think there's a wide horizon and prospect for much progress between now and next Capra, perhaps. So post-Newtonian second order calculation restricted to PN and perhaps also to PM. That would be an interesting possibility that I'd like to see. All right, so beyond that, there is the development of an adiabatic Emery model. Yeah, so leading order Emery model, but one that is both accurate, efficient, and extensive. And we are not quite yet, but there's been very promising work from the joint work of Niels and Alvin and their collaborators, and Michael. So this is definitely something that we'll see progress on in the next year, I suspect. And it's important to have progress on that. All right, next item, secondary spin and environmental effect. I already said that's something that we want to see for a long time. These are important things to look at. And finally, people are looking at this, and that's very nice to see. And there's a lot of work left to be done, as we've just had today. Fourth on my list is scattering and PN. I think there's great promise there. And I'm looking forward to being able to help with self-force calculation to this entire endeavor. This what was called, I think, correctly in this meeting, a breakthrough in PM. And that, of course, has impact on modeling of any modeling of two-body problem for LIGO as well. So going beyond the extreme mass ratio with this effort. Because again, the idea is to feed into the EOB model, and I'll just remind this remarkable observation that it's enough to have a calculation, first order self-force calculation of the scatter angle as a function of, say, velocity at infinity and impact parameter in order to determine the full 4 PM Hamiltonian, the full conservative dynamics to 4 PM order without any PN expansion. Or you can go to high order PN, or you can do the full PN things at the set by expanding in PM instead, if you prefer. But that's quite a big thing, and again shows how self-force calculations that shouldn't be too hard in principle can very easily inform or obtain bits of the dynamics that are very hard to get using other methods. And if we can do it, then why not? Let's do it. Okay, I've got another item on my list, something that we can call, I think, IMR with SMR. So that's in-spiral merger ring down with small mass ratio, IMR with SMR. Suppose if we omit the in from in-spiral and make it spiral merger ring down, that would be SMR with SMR, which might work better for marketing purposes. Somebody will need to think about that. But anyway, I just couldn't resist showing this beautiful plot that Martin and Howard provided us with. It's a paper that came out during the meeting. And it's first, I would think, sort of quantitative version of the space-time powder space diagram that shows the region of applicability of the different approximations. But now it does so quantitatively, and that's very significant. So you can see the small mass ratio there and Poissonian up there and numerical relativity. I just like to highlight the fact. You see there's a gap between numerical relativity and so, yeah, okay, lots of caveats. It's a first take on that problem and circular orbit and so on. But beyond that, it's nice to see how the small mass ratio approximation closes the gap between numerical relativity and Poissonian theory. I think it's a very pleasing thing to look at from our perspective. So I think that was a remarkable piece of calculation, and hopefully we'll see more of that. And also we'll see how this kind of analysis can then be used to design a model of the entire in-spiral of binaries with arbitrary mass ratios. Yeah. So again, we are making ourselves useful to LIGO. Okay, so there's a question mark there at the end, and I'd like to ask everyone if they can, if they want to make any comments, add more items to this list, or perhaps remove some of the items that I put there. Any other big activities that I might have missed? It's a discussion session. Discussion. Hello.
In the chat, resonances. Georgios is asking about resonances.
Oh yeah, sorry, I can't see the chart. Who's asking about resonances?
Georgios.
Yes, Georgios. I think I have failed. I should have included that. You're right. Yes. So yeah, so the plan is actually to get feedback from you and then feed it back into the slide. I'll do it later, and then there will be whatever we come up with at the end. We'll probably put it on a website for posterity so people can look it up later. So I'll add resonances. Thank you, Georgios. Anything else? where is the chat box? Aha.
It's tough to find. You have to
Yeah, found it.
click. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, resonances. Anyone else? Okay. All right, so yeah, so that's the frontiers. Next, what did I want to talk about next? Right, so observations. Can you see the full text on? It ends with demography and starts with longevity.
Yes, we can see the full text.
All right. Okay, so a few observations that I've made listening to all the talks, and I have listened to all the talks. Okay, longevity and vitality. Yeah, that is quite remarkable. We are now at Capra 23, which means that some of the younger speakers would have not been born when the first Capra happens, I suspect. And still we are very much alive and kicking. And that's quite astounding, remembering that the core problem that people started this entire endeavor thinking of is how small bodies move around a big black hole. It sounds like a very small and confined research problem, and look what happened as a result of that initial seed. There's a vast community of people who keep meeting yearly and keep coming with new ideas and keep breaking new barriers, making constant progress. And they keep asking new questions and keep finding new ways of solving old problems. And it's all very much alive. And it is my sense, that it is still the best is yet to come. Some great things are still ahead. And that's quite unusual, I think. So it's been going on for 23 years. I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. And it's still very much a very living organism, and it keeps growing and sending these new synapses towards other communities, which is a great thing to see. Okay, so no bad talks. Yeah, that is actually correct. I mentioned I did attend all the talks, and I don't think there was any bad one. They were all good, all engaging and fascinating and good in their own way. And that's something unusual for, you must agree with me, for a 1 week, a week-long conference. There's always bound to be, when you sit in a week-long conference, bound to be, 1 or 2 really strange talks that no one knows where they came from and no one understands. And when it comes time to ask questions at the end, everyone is looking the other way, and the chair of the session is left abandoned in the battlefield, and they try to come up with something sensible to say, but they can't, and it's all very embarrassing. But no such a thing here. I just, it's amazing, but we had a great meeting with very good talks, no exception.
And on that point, let me add that I did not have to curate the talks in that sense. There were a few talks that maybe came from people I hadn't heard of before myself, but I included every talk that was submitted on time, and even a few that were submitted after the registration deadline. And it just didn't take any effort to ensure that there were a lot of excellent talks, at least more or less on topic.
Yeah, there was no selection. That's part of why it is so outstanding, and it is some sort of a self-selection process in this community. So that's another great thing about Capra meetings. Okay, so yeah, we are increasing in scope constantly from meeting to meeting. We hear talks about new topics, and as part of it, we are also becoming more multicultural. People in the meeting come from different communities, different practices and different ways of doing things. But at the same time, there's a strong core focus that remains. And the way I see it, it drives the entire endeavor. Yeah, this Emery waveforms thing, which itself is based on a core of foundation, foundation of physics, rigorous physics. Okay, so next observation, LIGO exclamation mark. Yes, so it was very pleasing to and timely, half an hour before Meki's talk, my own students talk about modeling IMRIs, that we got this announcement, breaking news from LIGO about the detection, and we have direct connection with this community on an experiment now, an observation now, and that's great. And one of the things this community learned how to do is to make itself relevant to ongoing ground-based gravitational wave detector efforts. And the things we are doing are more and more relevant. So again, going back to this idea of IMRs with SMR, for example. So that was a nice thing to have in this conference, the breaking news in the middle. Okay, what is there to say about demography? Everyone is looking younger every year, but I'm enough of a relativist to sort of figure out where that comes from, I think. So a lot of young people, which is great. So it's a renewing community. We get fresh blood every year, so that guarantees that there will be continuity, and that's great. What's not so great is gender. I think we have a problem with that. So out of the 43 talks that I counted, 2 were by female speakers. And obviously it's not our fault, and definitely not Aaron's fault. As he said, he didn't reject any talk. But yeah, I really don't have anything more to say about it. It's just the observation that it's not right. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything about this.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you for bringing this up. And it was something that actually Seth Hopper reached out to me about yesterday and hoped we could include in this discussion. So it's great that you've already included it. And so I don't know if Seth wants to say something first, but if not, I would also want to comment on the issue of diversity and inclusiveness in Capra. So.
Hey, yeah, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Hey. Yeah, I mean, this was, I think, just the issue of inclusion and diversity has been on my mind a lot recently, partly being in the US and the Black Lives Matter movement, brings it to the forefront of my mind. It's been in the back of my mind about the Capra community for a while, in specifically to the point that Lior raised about not having a lot of women, especially if you compare our community to something like LIGO. I think it's, we would have to be statistically very unlucky if it were just that that we just don't happen to have very many women. I think that we should do some reflection. Especially those of us who are professors, who are men, people who are white, in thinking about like what sort of environment we create. And I guess I just also want to say, there's a lot of different types of diversity. I don't know of any queer people in the Capra community who are out to me. I think, there's a lot of different types of prejudices out there. And I would just hope that we can strive and think about as a community what we can do to try to create a welcoming environment. I don't know that this needs to be a huge discussion right now, but maybe it's something that can come up in future Capras. And we can, we should think about, especially, when we're hiring graduate students and stuff, think carefully. Anyway, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I had sent a quick message to Aaron, so I thought that I'm happy really that Lior brought up the subject as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Seth. And if I can continue on that point a little bit, I'm really grateful that you also mentioned people from all kinds of different groups. unfortunately, I think we lack representation from a lot of traditionally underrepresented groups in this community. And of course, part of that is because physics and astronomy as a whole, particularly theoretical, suffers very much from this problem. And it's a systematic problem with systemic roots. And of course, tackling it will take time. In the meantime, I think it's something we have noticed and discussed before, maybe not as directly as this, maybe only in smaller groups. And it will almost certainly take some proactive steps to change the situation. And I think one thing we can reflect on is the climate within the community. The reason why I came to Capra again and again, and why I say this is my favorite workshop of conference of the whole year, every year, is all of you are so warm, welcoming, and supportive of each other and of me and of new ideas. And I think we need to make sure that that warmth towards research is extending in a way that makes everyone feel welcome, and that everyone can see themselves as part of this community regardless of their background or their identity. And so I think probably we'll need to spend some time reflecting. I think we can probably think of some simple steps. Something I thought of way too late, and I'm embarrassed to say it, is enforcing a code of conduct on this meeting. I think that's an easy thing to adopt. I think adopting institutional decisions is difficult for Capra because we don't really have a governing board. This is sort of a self-organized thing. We have leaders that I think set the tone and the culture by example and not so much by any kind of mandates coming down from the top. And so I don't know to what extent we maybe need a little more structure in the community, but certainly we do need to agree on community standards that continue to enhance the welcoming nature that I feel like we have in this community that I think is our strongest strength. So that may have been a little bit of a disorganized comment from my part, but that's what I have to say about this.
Thanks, Aaron and Seth. Leanne is mentioning that they have some ideas. Would you like to tell us anything, Leanne? Share those with us, perhaps?
Hi, Leor. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Hi. I just want to thank you so much for bringing up this topic. I know it's very important to me, and it's should really be important to everyone. At the moment, our sort of suggestions and ideas are very preliminary, so I won't give anything in too much detail, but I would be very interested in having a discussion on this with members of the community, and particularly what Aaron said about having a code of conduct. Now, I have found the Capra community incredibly welcoming, and it's a community I'm very proud to be part of. And I don't think it's unfortunate that these kinds of things maybe need to be discussed, but I think that is certainly important. And of course, as you mentioned, it's no fault of the organizers if women are not signing up to talk. I think it's so easy for us to take a passive role in these kinds of things, say, oh, it's difficult, I don't know what we can really do about it if people aren't signing up. But there are things we can do about it. We can go back to our institutions and encourage all of our female colleagues, our female students, and encourage them to become part of this community and actively work on improving our demography. So that's the main thing that I wanted to say, but I look forward to further discussions on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna?
Hey, Leor. Thanks for bringing this up. Also, behind the scenes, there's definitely been a few of us chatting about this. So I definitely would echo support for everything that's been said so far. I think one idea that has been bounced around is maybe a few people gathering, because I mean, like, of course, people ask me, oh, what do you think? I don't know how to solve this. So I think the idea of putting maybe together a small group who could actually look at this, against all diversities, of course, and just see what other groups have done, because we're not the only one out there who has this issue, and some people have made headway, and maybe a group could form that just takes a look at this, and if that group itself could be diverse, as in like not leaving it to all the minorities to do this, and I don't mind organizing that if people want to just shoot me an email and say that they're interested, and then we can take it further and maybe revisit next Capra.
Great, so we have a volunteer. Thank you, Anna. We'll talk about this offline later. Great, yeah, so there will be more discussion of that, I'm sure. Okay, so a lot of stuff on the chart.
I was just making the comment that, you know, again, one can say it's no fault of the organizer XYZ, but a more proactive approach might also help with this potentially. So I could have, for example, reached out more directly and thoughtfully to the larger community if you know the goal is to have a more diverse slate of speakers and chairs. So that's something we could potentially pursue. But again, these are ideas that we can perhaps discuss in an ongoing manner. It also looks like Andrea has a hand up.
Yeah, just let me just say that actually, when I saw your first email asking for people to serve as chairs, it was a perfect balance, and I'm sure you were thinking about that aspect when you wrote that email, and that should be you know, commended. Okay, Andrea.
Yeah, just adding to what I think is a very, very important point by Leanne. We are struggling at the AI as well with gender equality. So in particular, but nowadays also more in general. So we had discussions about this. What we came up with, which could be useful for this community as well. Well, in general, it would be useful to echo what Leanne was saying, to try to include people very early on during the career, meaning go out and talk to people in undergrads or master students and try to convince them to, in general, not even just the Capra community, to pursue a career in physics. Then all the better if they come to the Capra community. But I think the problem is a little bit more widespread than the Capra community. And the second, this brings me to another point that may be useful, and somewhat also mentioned so far. I think it would be very important to have some sort of outreach, some group that may go out and discuss and try to, you know, actively, proactively, as it was said, try to include people early on during the careers. I think they do something like that in the LISA consortium. So perhaps this is also something to think of in this community as well.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Okay, to be continued. Right. Yeah, so let's move on. Unless we have anyone else wants to say anything about these things. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay. What's next on our agenda? Yes. So, right. So this has been a an unusual meeting. Obviously, the first online Capra meeting. And there are big things to discuss about online meetings, but I want to restrict the discussion to the context of Capra and think specifically how this works for us in a specific Capra context. And this is where I have an empty slide, really, and I want to really open this for discussion, and maybe we can organize it into, you know, things that worked well or advantages of having it this way, and then things that maybe we can honestly say that they haven't worked so well, not because of Aaron. Aaron's organization has been perfect, and we'll get back to this, but because of the limitation of the format. And maybe we can think of ways of improving things, should we ever have to do this again. Okay, so let's dedicate some 10 minutes of discussion for that. And I want to hear from you. So I put a first item under advantages, which obviously reach. I think we had, Aaron told me we had around 200 people registered for the meeting. And I think we had something of order 80 at any given time listening to talks. And that's twice as many as we normally have. And it's partly, of course, because it's much easier to attend an online meeting than to travel to Austin. So that's an obvious advantage of having it this way. Okay, so I want to open the discussion now. And does anyone want to say anything, suggest anything to go under either of these columns? How do you think it went?
I'd like to make a few comments. I was not able to attend all of the talks. And normally I think that online meetings are much more difficult than face-to-face meetings, but I found this worked better than average, partly because of the smaller community. Another thing which I think, in my opinion, was very helpful was the structure that every day had time dedicated to discussion. Sometimes we try and have all the talks in the first few days and then discussion mostly at the end. I feel that this format that Aaron has come up with perhaps has some advantages, and I would like to consider us adopting this format in future, whether it's face-to-face or not, just to see if the advantages continue, and if not, to tweak it to try and get the best out of meeting together when we do.
Yeah, I think I agree with you with that, on that, Bernard. That worked better. Let me just say that I'm taking notes now, and I'll add all of those things into the slide later, and that will be on the website. Anyone wants to either respond? Yeah, Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I think it would be good in going forward, having some kind of online format available would be great. Because I mean, like everybody knows, especially when you're a student or a postdoc, or even in later stages, sometimes you do have limited funding and you have to make choices. So there has been times where I've missed a Capra meeting, but I didn't totally want to. And then you feel like you might have just missed that moment where everybody's talking about what's coming next. And then it's up to you to kind of individually check in with people to see what's going on. So having an online format as well would be really, really good in the future. So people could not have to pick or choose. Is it Capra or is it a more general GR conference? So I think that this worked so well, we could look at somehow incorporating it in the future.
Okay, thank you. Niels?
Yeah, I was going to make the very same point, that it would be, blended as an option, and we should certainly look at it. I think it can be quite hard. I've seen when people have done this in the past in conferences, that the online side is always very much the second class. It's not paid so much attention to, but it would be good to try and get that right, because yeah, exactly as Anna says, it allows people to attend who might not be able to for a variety of reasons, whether it's funding or family commitments or whatever. And so I think we really should try and have that as an option in the future. I'd be very supportive of that.
So we are talking about people actually participating in real time in the meeting via some online channel. And there's also the option of recording everything, which I think is another useful thing to have, right? So both things. Okay. Thank you, Niels. Alex?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
In addition to what Anna pointed out, it hasn't been mentioned, I mean, maybe a little bit by you quickly, but I think it may be important to an increasing number of people, well, I hope so, for, let's say, environmental reasons in general. I imagine that more and more scientists are now thinking more seriously about their travels. And so I would think that this is an additional reason for making as systematic as possible the possibility to attend Capra online in the future.
Yes, yes, thank you, Alex, for mentioning that. That's a good point. Yeah. Ben?
It might seem like quite a small point, but I accept what Alex says and what Niels and Anna said are all very valid. Just in reference to the current times where people might be working from home rather than universities, I think a blended option might be a better idea just because of people's internet connections. I know of some people that may not have been able to give talks or may not have been able to properly attend just because they're from home or in a more rural area and therefore maybe not have a good enough internet connection to use Zoom, for example. So it's a minor point, but I feel it should be considered going forward.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so I think just the fact that we are now familiar with this format and see that it can work and got used to all the, the technicalities of clicking the right buttons, that itself would mean that these things are with us to stay, and we will be making use of them in the future. Wojciech.
So I just have maybe like 3 points I wanted to mention. So when we were organizing the PHP toolkit, actually we were using the same kind of Zoom option of live streaming to YouTube. And I got like 5 or 6 emails from people who said that they really liked the option of being able to pause the talks and then follow them immediately and kind of like, lag maybe a few minutes behind the talks so that they can jump forward and ask questions and so on. So this is definitely something that people like, this feature. In certain cases, it makes it more convenient. But another point that I wanted to say is that actually I went to Capra the first time 2 years ago, and I met all these people, and I mainly met them through like lunches, through lunch breaks. I talked to people, and these random encounters with people and getting to know the community is something you will not quite get from the online meeting. So I just wanted to say this, that the online meeting is a good way to keep up with people, keep up with the research. But if you are new to the community, I think it is extremely hard to, for instance, meet new people or get to know new people you don't know already in the crowd of icons. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, point well made. Let me say something about YouTube recordings of lectures. I think some people, perhaps a large minority, but I'm including that minority, are not comfortable with the recorded lectures, recording lectures. Well, for me, it's because I hate the way I speak and all the mistakes I make in English, and I don't want anyone to replay it over and over again, make fun of me later on. So I have some problems with this. I'm trying to, yeah. Well, anyway, and I think some other people have the same problems. So we should just remain. Well, acknowledge that some people may remain unhappy for their talks to be recorded, and just we'll have to live with that.
Yeah, so I wanted to say a couple things to these points. So like Wojciech, I got a few thankful emails for the live stream, which is something I wouldn't have thought of doing had it not been suggested to me by Leo and Niels and Barry and the other organizers of the Black Hole Perturbation Toolkit workshop. I think it has a huge benefit to making the meeting even more accessible. People who have bad internet connections are going to be more likely to be able to access YouTube. People without Zoom and other issues can at least watch. What I tried to make clear to everyone is that if you didn't feel comfortable being live streamed or recorded, I would be happy to turn that off. And it's so trivial to do that, that I did in fact do it for one of the speakers. So I think so long as we make it clear that there's no shame in feeling like you don't want to be either recorded or live streamed, then we can retain the benefit for a large audience. Because there's nothing wrong with not wanting to be recorded. I think you could feel that way for a huge number of reasons.
Yeah, if I could add something, I personally really like having talks on YouTube, not just because for internet connection reasons, but like, especially if you miss something, you can rewind and you can kind of see it again. So for me, that helps me learn really efficiently because I can quickly, go back and check anything I might have missed,
Yeah, the advantages are clear. Yeah, as long as we remain conscientious that some people just don't like that, and there's no shame attached to that, then exactly as Aaron said, then we're all good. So let me divert the discussion a little bit. What do people think about the parallel channels that were available for discussion here in this meeting? How much did people use that? And did they find it useful? Do they want it to happen in a different way?
You're talking about the Slack channel, Lior? Or
toolkit?
Yeah. So I haven't seen a huge amount of activity on the main channels of that, not as much as I had expected, but I think part of that is a function of us being able to all be in a large room and discuss freely with each other. I think the benefit of that channel will be more apparent in the coming days if we need to continue to talk about things.
Yeah, so that I also felt that we should think about how to do it perhaps better next time. Niels.
Yeah, I think certainly for the toolkit workshop, we found the Slack channel to be really good at organizing people. There you have very particular tasks that you might be working on, like adding a bit of code to something. And then I think it was really great. There has been some discussion in other channels other than the main Capra channel. And I think I agree with Aaron that probably going forward, people might continue to use it as a way of just sort of keeping up sort of bubbling discussion going along.
I would be interested along the lines of the Slack channel in hearing about some ideas to address Wojciech's point, which is, I think I am in complete agreement with. I think the major disadvantage, I think there's two disadvantages to online conferences. One is if you can get to a conference, which involves, a lot of cost in many ways, you're stuck there, and it can be a time to really focus on that conference and not be distracted by many other things. So I think the ability to carve out focused time is one benefit of a conference, and the other benefit is the socialization. Perhaps that's the most important benefit. I didn't try to include any social activities. I thought maybe if there was a taste for it, those might be spontaneously organized. But maybe we can be a little more thoughtful about that if we do another virtual meeting, or if we do blended meetings, ways to foster that kind of socialization and relaxed meeting outlet.
Yeah, I hear say that the Dublin Southampton young guys had a binge drinking night on Wednesday. We can turn that into a conference event next time. It's much safer to drink in the comfort of your home and then just drop on your bed. Then endanger your surroundings by drinking in a bar in an unfamiliar city.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Wojciech, you have a hand up.
Yeah, Wojciech.
So we were actually thinking about the social aspect of the thing before the PHP Toolkit workshop, and well, our original concept was that there will be 20 to 30 people at the workshop, and somehow we lived in the illusion that this will be the case also for the online workshop. And then there was 100 people, but the original idea was that people would, for instance, have a short introduction. So everyone who is attending the workshop would turn on their camera and just say, hello, my name is, and I am from and you would put a face and a voice to, you know, someone you would maybe remember a little bit. But in the end, we moved this to a channel at Slack where people can introduce themselves. But of course, it's not so personal, right? And yeah, we were thinking about these concepts, but of course, 100 people, it's pretty hard to organize. You would have to somehow create, you know, random subdivisions into groups, the way it happens at conferences when people have to go to different restaurants because not all the 50 people can go to the same restaurant, right? So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I haven't been looking at the chat. So as you could see, it was a big message on my screen saying your computer is unstable or something, and things are slowing down. So I may have to switch to my iPad in a moment, but let's continue for now.
I think the main comment in the chat right now is from Jonathan Thornburg saying that having the presentations in PDF or slide format is very beneficial. Let me take that opportunity to say, in case you missed the bulk email, for all the speakers, please send me your slides if you're comfortable doing so. I'm going to figure out where I can host them, and then I'll provide links on the conference website that will be persistent, and you should be able to look at those talks again in a year or two or more.
Okay. Is there a record of the chat that's saved somewhere?
Technically, all of the records have been saved for all of these calls. So yes, I can also explicitly save it at the end of this meeting just to make sure it's on my local hard drive.
All right. Yeah, because I want to look at all these points that I may have missed.
Yeah, I'll save the chat and I'll send it to you.
All right, good, thank you. Yeah. All right, so anyone else wants to comment on that topic? Okay, so we have five minutes past now. That's good. And we want to move on. So I think
Anna got her hand up.
Oh, Anna, there you go. Anna, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. There was something I just, I think other people might have noticed this as well, but like this week I was super impressed with not just the number of students we have at the moment, like you were saying about a lot of young people, but also like some really high quality talks, like all around from the students. And I know a few years ago we played with the idea of having a student best talk, but I think at the time people were like, well, there's only like 5 students. It's not going to be much of a competition. But since now, you know, everything's spreading out more and there's all these groups popping up, maybe we could revisit this for next year's Capra of actually doing an official best talk for the students and putting a little committee together, you know, at the time of next Capra to try do that.
Yeah, we could. Yep. Because adding a competitive element is something we need to think about carefully in the context of Capra, but that's an idea which we can think about.
At the local APS meetings in the US, there's been a tradition of having student talk prizes, which I don't think has ever generated any bad feelings, although sometimes you feel a little bad if you thought you gave a really good talk. And I think there are also things that some of the students can feel very proud of and very supported by. So I think, you know, even if there's no funding for it, even if we can't make a nice cash or physical prize, we could certainly at least award it. And as Leo is now saying in the chat, maybe their International Society for General Relativity and Gravitation could financially sponsor it. So maybe we could also find some sponsorship for a small prize.
All right, yeah. Yeah, on the topic of students, many students here are students of Capra graduates, right? So Capra veterans, and to get a perspective, I consider myself a second order, you know, graduate, and now we've got, you know, Niels, the third generation. Did I say older? I meant generation. and now we get these great talks from Niels' students as a fourth generation. So you can see where it's coming from, the quality, right? All right. Oh, my audio is breaking up. Is that so?
We got most of it.
Okay, I think. Okay. Okay, let's move on. If it gets any worse, let me know, and I'll change to a different platform. Okay, so next one is my thanks slides. So Aaron, I hope you can still hear me. I don't know how many conferences like this you organized before, but it was flawless. And
This was my first.
Yeah, so we don't know what happens behind the scene in your little room there, running all this great production, but it was perfect, and I think all of us owe you a lot for this. I don't know if we can maybe have some actual clapping going on here. I need some more people to help me. Maybe all the people whose first names start with A, I can clap together on the people whose name starts with A, not including Aaron.
Well,
so much, and also yes, the admirable way in which you handle the little mishaps when those happened. Very cool.
And there were very few of them. I want to take a moment and also give my thanks. So, you know, first of all, I have a student, Richard George. He has not been attending these meetings because he's not really working on Salesforce stuff, but he he built the website and ran it during the week and was very responsive to my requests. So I'm grateful to him very much. I'm grateful to my other students, Sergi, Navarro Albalat, and Maria Jose Bustamante Rosell, who hasn't been on the calls, but both of them were standing by to take over in case of emergency. Thankfully, that wasn't ever required. I really want to thank everyone who chaired the session. The discussion chairs did amazing jobs. The session chairs also did great jobs and really offloaded some effort from me, from having to both answer emails and run the talks. And then finally, if you think the format worked well, I think you owe your thanks to the organizers of the Black Hole Perturbation Toolkit conference, because they pioneered all the ideas and gave me great advice in how to set this up. So big thanks to them. Niels, especially Barry and Leo were in direct communication with me.
Great. Let's have another round of claps for all of those, I suggest. Come on, people with the A. That's a great audience effect. Excellent. Yes. So you were saying those students whose name you mentioned are not on the call at the moment.
Sergi is, none of the rest are.
Sorry, say again?
But Sergi is, he's a co-host. None of the rest are, but I will extend your applause later today when I meet with them.
Okay, can Sergi then just say hi to us and just so that we know him, and he can tell us in a sentence what his project is about, perhaps?
Sergi, are you there?
Yes, yeah, I'm here. Thank
Sorry
you,
for putting you on the
Aaron.
spot. Yeah.
And thank you, everyone. Well, I have like the project that it's like related to the Salesforce. It's specifically about trying to compute the redshift quantity coming from numerical simulations, and then trying to make the connection to the Salesforce prediction. So yeah, that's basically what I've been what I'm currently working at the moment, and hopefully I'll be able to present results soon.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you for all the help with the meeting. Okay, so yeah, I thought we should do the thanks now in case it's getting late in Europe, and maybe not everyone wants to listen to the Lisa part. So I thought Aaron should get and his people should get the applause they deserve. But before we move to Lisa, I want to talk about next Capra. Do we have any volunteers? Anyone who might want to think about this? Of course, there's no commitment from at this stage.
I think we might be able to do it next year. This is Juan. Yeah, I've talked to Eric, and also people in Perimeter, and they're all very supportive of the idea of having Capra either, I mean, jointly in Guelph, in Perimeter, or in either of these places. So, yeah, I think probably next year will be good. We don't know whether it's going to be online or face-to-face meeting at this point, but yeah, I think generally speaking, we'd like to host for the next Capra meeting. Yeah.
Great, that's good to hear, Juan. So that will be the second Capra meeting at PI. So you're saying it's either in Guelph or in PI?
Yeah.
Perhaps. Okay, great. So yeah, so a group of us will probably be in contact on that, and we'll explore that possibility. Do we have any other proposals, suggestions? So going to PI will be consistent with, well, won't be consistent with our alternation semi-rule, North America and the rest of the world. But if we are online, then it doesn't really matter. Any other suggestions? Come on, people from exotic places. Niels, though you are not in an exotic place, so go ahead.
I wasn't offering. I've done it a few times as I've moved around. I just wanted to say that I was rather looking forward to going to Austin at some point. I've never been. I'm not saying that Aaron should host it next year, but it'd be great at some point if you felt like doing it. I would.
I was looking forward to having everyone in Austin, and I think I learned a few things from my mistakes. So I would be happy to actually really host people, perhaps in a few years. As Peter is saying, also Ian Vega mentioned an interest in hosting a Capra. It's middle of the night for him, so he's not here. But we should keep him in mind for perhaps the next Capra, if we go with Guelph PI.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
But I am willing.
It was me being bad, Aaron, but we really should offer you the privilege of hosting the next meeting should you want to. Absolutely, yes. I think we owe you that.
Not right away, but certainly it would be great to have you all actual physical guests. Austin's a really great city. Hot in the summer, but otherwise.
Yeah, well, it's been more than 30 degrees here in South England, would you imagine? So you never know. Okay, any other suggestions? No? Okay, good. So we'll take it offline later. We'll talk to Juan and to Ian. We'll see. And we'll obviously keep everyone informed about those things. Okay, are we ready to move to the second part of this session? Lisa, Capra and Lisa. Unless there's anyone who wants to say anything about organizational matter or anything to do with this conference. Andrew.
Hi, I've just thought of a point which relates back to the diversity discussion earlier. It's just an idea that maybe if people want to put their pronouns out there, maybe at the start of a talk, maybe that could be encouraged to sort of welcome the trans community.
I think that would be good.
Yeah, I agree. I think simple gestures that can be very, very meaningful, and that's something that we can all adopt if we feel comfortable doing so.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I'm just taking notes. Okay. John. Okay, you relayed the message. Yes, we'll be in contact with Ian, but you can already tell him to expect a call from us. Well, thank you, John. Okay, anything else before moving on? So here I may have to share the screen. So let me do that. And so I'm losing sight of the participant list and the chat. So
I'll monitor the hands up. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Let's go to full screen. Okay, so I won't bother you too much with this. I have 3 slides here. The first is a sort of a status update where Lisa is at the moment, where it's been recently. The second is about the consortium. And the third is about specifically how we are, as Capra, can participate in this big endeavor. That's Lisa. And so for the third part, I'll ask for assistance from relevant lead members of the consortium who are here with us. So Niels is here. I'm not sure if Barry is here. Martin, Adam, and I'll invite them to chime in whenever they. Wherever they can help me to say what I want to say. Okay, so 2 slides first with a summary of where we are now. The first is Lisa review flow. In case you are interested in the fascinating way in which this kind of projects happen in ESA. So yes, projects like this are sort of, in terms of workflow, they are divided into phases. And so now we are in phase B1. Say in a moment what that means. But the start of the project, the formal start of the project, Lisa project in its most recent incarnation was in June 2017, where the mission concept proposal was selected among all the other proposals, and that marked the start of phase 0, which ended in April 2018. So during that phase 0, a lot of paperwork, and people were preparing contracts to companies to start, exploring different aspects of the mission, different bits of equipment, for example. And that process was initiated beginning of phase A, which has led to a mission selection back in October last year. And so things are organized in this way: phase A, phase B1, phase B2, or in phase A, you still have multiple candidate missions. So you have a basic concept, but you have different ways to implement it, the different arm lengths, for example, different number of links between the satellites, and so on. And all of these proposals are studied by in parallel by different contractors. So there are parallel studies that go in parallel on a competitive basis. And then everything is put together and assessed, and that's this big document called the Mission Consolidation Review, and Lisa passed that very well, October last year. And there was a specific mission architecture that was selected, the one we are familiar with now. And that marked the end of phase A and the beginning of phase B1, in which we are now. In this phase now, we have one selected architecture. There's still a lot of fine details to decide about, and it's still run between different contractors. So there's still different contractors working on different aspects of the. So on each specific aspect of the design, there are different contractors doing the study at the moment. And this phase will run until sometimes the end of 22, most likely now with COVID and all, into 2023. And if this phase B1 will end with what's called a mission adoption. So that's next big stage. It's a big milestone because after that, the big amount of money is starting to pour from the agency to the winning contractors. And so in a way, it's a point of no return in some way. And that's the beginning of phase B2. And now they start to implement the design, and then you have one contractor working on each piece of equipment and each piece of the payload. It's very schematically. So we are in phase B1. There's a lot of interaction with the consortium now. So ESA comes to the consortium with questions to do with specific elements of the design. In particular, they ask the LISA science group how design decisions that they need to take now affect the ability of LISA to deliver on the science objectives. And that's where we come into the play via our participation in the consortium. Okay, so in the next slide, I'm going to remind you or tell the newcomers about how things are structured within the consortium. But if anyone has any question about the slides, you can take it now. The launch date is still nominally 2034. Possibility that it will happen a couple of years earlier. So I can't see the chat or the hands. Is there anyone on?
There are no questions right now. Would anyone like to ask a question at this point? It doesn't look like it.
Yeah, that's a fascinating bureaucracy that everyone is really eager to learn about that we've just covered. Right, so on to the LISA consortium. And so that's a bit of the organizational chart that describes how the consortium is organized. The consortium is still a sort of run on a voluntary basis. It's not funded really pretty much. And it basically that the body that is tasked with making sure that LISA can deliver what it's supposed to deliver. And when data comes in, that's a body that will, get access to the data and do the analysis. And so I'm only showing you the sort of operative or operational part of the structure. There's layers upon layers of managerial structure on top of what you're seeing here. The main sort of executive, let's say operational arms of the consortium in the top layer, the LISA instrument group, the LIG, LISA data processing group, the LDPG, and in the middle, the LISA science group, LSG. So work within the LISA science group is organized in work packages. There are about 100 of them, maybe more. And so to make things manageable, they are further organized into groups of work packages. So you see all the groups of work packages that we currently have in LSG. So data analysis tools, latency pipeline, source catalog, source identification, multi-messenger, science interpretation. And among these is the waveforms. So it's a crucial part of the story is our ability to produce waveforms, templates for detection and interpretation of the signals. And that's of course recognized by the project. So coordinating this is Hal and myself. And within the waveform group of packages, we have specific packages, and they are down there in pink. So there's one sort of generic studies of model requirements for all the sources. And there's another generic one on the other hand, and that's about designing tools for fast waveform generation and tools to interface those waveforms with whatever, with a particular LISA data analysis environment. And in between, there are source-specific work packages. There's one MRIs, one of massive black holes, black hole mergers, one of galactic binaries, one of stellar origin black hole binaries. and one on strings and other and transient sources. I've highlighted here, I've put the names in red of people who manage those packages, and only that's so for people from who are in this meeting. And the point would be that you see that we are nicely represented in this structure, which means that whatever we do immediately influences work of the consortium, and also that basically we have a handle on the project. So when we do something, we can immediately channel it into the project and make ourselves useful by doing so. So the links are there. We don't need to shout in order to be heard. We are well represented within this within the consortium. Okay, so that's sort of the inner core of the LSG. On top of that, or besides that, we have this big with these 4 boxes at the bottom, and they are the main channel in which science, in which a consortium communicates with a community at large, or the science community. And these are called the work packages, the working groups. And so there's astrophysics, cosmology, fundamental physics, and there is also a dedicated working group on waveforms that is led by Deirdre Schumacher, Helge Wittek, Niels Wolverton, and Martin van der Mint. So again, a good representation from the Capra community inside this effort in the working group leadership. And so when you sign up into the consortium, you sign up into a working group, and you can also choose to sign up specifically into a work package and help with the specific delivery of the package. So, right. Any questions on this at this point?
Ricardo had a question. I don't know if you want to ask it now.
Yeah, I can ask it now. So it's not clear to me how fundamental physics, I think there should be a strong overlap between fundamental physics and waveforms, because, or does it include anything else than testing GR in the shape of the waveform?
Lior, if you want to answer. Sorry, I was going to say, if you want to answer this, please, I just wanted to add, I'm in the science interpretation fundamental physics work package, so I can also comment.
Oh, yes, of course, yes. Yeah, let me just say that the fundamental physics working group is about tests of GR. Yes, that's the context of the work of this group. So interpretation of the signals when you have signals, whereas waveforms is about designing of the templates for detection and interpretation. So slightly different emphasis. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's a great question and one we've discussed. So inside the science interpretation work package, there's some sub-packages, 3 of which are dedicated to fundamental physics questions, such as tests of GR. And there's no question that there's going to be a really intense overlap. And in fact, many people in the waveforms working group, and I think in the waveforms work packages, are interested in figuring out how to model non-GR effects. And I think in the end, obviously, our tests of GR are only as good as our waveform models. So the mandate, I think, for the work package science interpretation is to, I think, make sure that tools are implemented and also to interpret the results of various analyses in the context of the scientific information we can get from them. The waveforms working group is going to be, the fundamental physics working group is going to be less rigidly organized, more free-flowing, and I imagine that there'll be people in that working group who are going to be generating beyond GR waveforms, right? And they will probably hopefully be in contact with the waveform groups as well. But making sure there's a free flow of information is going to be one of the challenges and one of the important things to do.
Sure, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, many people sit on more than one of those And same can be said about the astrophysics working group. There's a lot of overlap with them as well. Yeah, I think it's fair to say the waveform working group is about solving the Einstein equations. If you want to do anything beyond that, that's probably going to be done in fundamental physics. But yeah, it's both, yeah, undecided yet, and it's best if it remains vague anyway in the end. Good question. Any other questions? So yeah, as I mentioned, we are now in phase B1, and we already had several rounds of studies where where ESA via the the consultative management came to us and asked specific questions about how various features of the design affect the ability of LISA to do what it's supposed to do. And so if I can move on to, yes, that would be my last point there. So now the discussion is about how we can contribute as a community and how you can individually contribute. And so most concretely, that's something that is happening recently, and some of us have been part of that. We get a request from the consortium, from higher up in the consortium, to answer the question: what if we put a wall at such and such frequency, and you can't measure anything beyond that? How is that going to affect your ability to see MRIs and do GR tests with MRIs? And they give you about a month or 2 months, and you have to come up with an answer to that question. And so, yeah, we organize a writing team, and the writing team solicits contribution from the community. And this is where you, if you're part of it, can meaningfully contribute. And we do need all the expertise that we can from us. And it's a very precious thing that we have, really, this expertise, and the project needs it. So yes, that's just to encourage people. If you're not yet in it, then please sign up. Recently, we have low frequency characteristic studies. We have mission duration, and we had very recently study of the effect of data gaps. Yeah. So far, yeah, MRIs haven't been. Yeah, the questions were only marginally important for MRIs, but almost certainly they will start to look at the the sweet bucket of the noise curve in the middle, where things really are important for us, and then they will come back and we need us, and we need the expertise that we have to answer those questions. Okay, so at this point, let me come out of full screen again, and so I've listed several items under how we can contribute. So become a consulting member. I can tell you how to do that in practice if you're interested. Sign up for one or more of the working groups and to work packages. There's now an ongoing work on a white paper that Niels and other here are running or coordinating. And as I said, most concretely, this community can do a lot by way of informing these mission studies that keep coming now. So, Niels. Oh, so you're saying of course it does, because Helvi is there, right? I've misspoken. That is true, yes. Thank you, Niels, for correcting me. So yes, so the WAV-WG does include modeling of non-GR and non-standard model sources. That is true, I have forgotten.
So
okay.
There are no hands up at the moment.
Niels, would you like to tell us something about the white paper?
Yeah, sure. So I think as you said, every working group has been asked to write a white paper, and so the waveform working group has started that process. And you said, you know, I put myself and Helvi and Deirdre and Martin are really just the coordinators, and our goal has been to delegate. And so the main section in the white paper for us is obviously on the Emery source modeling, and that's being led and coordinated by Adam Pound and Marta Corleone. And they have then also further delegated different sections to different people. So we're in the process of starting the writing. I think the goal is by the end or mid-July, we will have some sort of rough sketches, a sort of very early draft of some of those sections. And then I think the idea is really to polish it up to a kind of finished draft by September or so. So if you are interested in getting involved, this is definitely the time. And yeah, if you make any contribution, well, the whole waveform working group will be authors on that paper. It'll actually be a two-tiered authorship, which is what the consortium has adopted. So those who write and contribute significantly will be in the first tier, but everyone is welcome to be on an author on the paper as a sort of endorsement if they wish. But if you have any interest in being involved at all, either reach out to myself or Adam or Marta on the Emery section. I'll be very happy to include you and talk about where you could fit into that process.
Thank you. So Ricardo was the person who asked the question about the fundamental physics. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's been discussed. Okay, thank you. All right, anyone wants to either correct me or say anything else? Alvin, maybe?
No.
I know you. Yeah,
Sorry?
I know you want to have more people in your to help you with what you need to do in your package, not necessarily from this community.
Yes, I certainly think so. And I think also the offer is still very much wide open to anyone who might be interested in contributing to the sort of work that me and Michael have talked about at this Capra. Yeah, so just reach out to me, or anything related to data analysis as well, if you're interested. Thanks.
Thank you. Nils, your hand is up.
Yeah, I think just to echo that, I think all of the work packages would gratefully have more people working in them. So these are the tasks that we've identified in the consortium that have to be complete. They have some objective and some deliverable, whether that's a theory or a piece of code or something that will actually go into detecting emeries. And so the most relevant of those are the kind of theory side, which Adam leads, the numerical implementation side, which I lead. There is also non-GR signals in LISA and environmental signals, which Richard Bretto leads. And then, of course, Alvin's on the kind of fast waveforms and data analysis side. And I think all of them would very much welcome more people being involved directly. So if you're interested, do get involved.
Yes, thank you. And as I said, this is now concrete activity. It's not nothing. It's not hanging in the air like it was a year ago when no one was quite sure what it means to sign up to work. This is actually work that's being done and needs contribution. So that's the time to join, I think. Adam.
Yeah, I thought that Niels and I should mention that we are planning to have a workshop specifically devoted to those work packages, probably in January. It was originally going to be in August, but we decided to postpone it because of the pandemic. So we had advertised it just a small group of people, but we're very happy to get as many people involved as possible.
Thank you. Will there be an announcement somewhere?
There should be, yeah.
Like on the hyperspace, the usual places, or or within the consortium? So you will advertise broadly.
So we have a significant mailing list that would include everyone in the Capra mailing list already that we would advertise to, but then also put it up on Hyperspace and think about where else.
All right. Okay, any questions or comments? So Lisa is great, but as we've discussed, we see how what we do here and now already informs the next generation of accurate detection templates for ground-based detect tools, which is nice. Anything else? So we are now at 16 minutes before the hour. Okay. Okay, is it time to close then, Aaron? What do you think?
Yeah, I think given that it's late on a Friday for some of us, this is a perfectly good time to close out the meeting. So I would be very brief. Thank you all so much for making this another great Capra meeting. I really appreciate it. This is, like I said earlier in this call, my favorite conference of the whole year, and this community has been really wonderful to be a part of. So I'm going to close down the live stream, shut off the recording. There's going to be additions to the website as time goes on. I will add the slides to the website. I'll make sure that all the talks are linked. Right now, they all should be linked through the live stream anyway, but I'll add chapter annotations to those calls, to those videos to make navigation easier. Just give me a little bit of time to do that. And yeah, thanks everyone. It was a real pleasure. So I'll turn my camera off and we'll
Thanks
call
again
this.
to you, Aaron.
You're very welcome. Let's call this Capra to a close.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye.